Ivy Warren stood behind the concessions counter at the Olympic Training Center, her fingers expertly counting out change for a customer who barely glanced her way. Her uniform was slightly faded, a simple blue and white combination that seemed to blend into the background of the buzzing sports complex. Ivy's presence was unassuming. She was used to being overlooked. Her hair was tied back neatly, her eyes focused, yet she moved with an ease that suggested she knew every inch of this place without needing to draw a map. Athletes, trainers, and their entourages swept past her like a fast current, animated, loud, and clearly tuned into a frequency she was not meant to intercept. Occasionally, Ivy caught snippets of conversation, jargon that layered the air like a complicated melody. Laughter rippled from a group gathered near the track, pointing, likely at her old sneakers or the archaic way she tucked in her shirt. Ivy took it in stride. This was all part of the territory. Beyond the open doors of the concession hall, the day's main draw was in full view. Rachel Mendez, the star sprinter, streaking along the rubbery path, her every movement a ballet of strength and precision. The audience's energy was palpable, a shared anticipation building with every second of Rachel's run. And then, a tremor. Ivy heard the collective gasp before she saw it, Rachel crumpling midway around the bend, clutching her chest, her face a mask of shock. The scene around the track shifted instantly from riveted spectatorship to panicked chaos. Ivy felt it ripple through the air, a barrage of shouted commands and flustered movements. She paused, her heartbeat aligning with the pulsing urgency of the moment, and took a step forward as the world scrambled. As the world around her seemed to dissolve into chaos, Ivy Warren felt an unfamiliar calm settle over her. The panicked voices and frantic gestures washed past her as though she stood in the eye of an emotional storm. She could see the knots of confusion forming, the frozen athletes, the shouting coaches, the media scrambling to capture the spectacle, and the medics stuck behind a wall of frightened onlookers. They were all inadvertently blocking the one clear path. Rachel Mendez lay motionless on the track, her face pale, her breaths shallow and erratic. Ivy's instincts kicked into overdrive. She didn't hesitate. Making her way swiftly through the crowd, Ivy's voice carried above the chatter, authoritative and clear. "Everyone, step back. Give her some air." Her words sliced through the disarray, shocking nearby people into action. Faces turned, part suspicion, part hope. Ignoring the ripple of unease her presence created, Ivy focused on Rachel, kneeling beside her and checking her pulse, the rapid but weakening flutter that told her time was of the essence. "You, call 911 now," she directed at a young man standing nearby, thrusting his phone into his hands. Her confidence was contagious, sweeping through the inertia that had gripped the spectators. As she worked, Ivy tuned out everything unnecessary. She needed cold compresses. Pointing to someone within reach, she requested, "Get ice packs from the stand," hurriedly. Her voice brokered no argument, and without hesitating, the person dashed off to comply. As the crowd remembered itself, forming a wide berth around Ivy and Rachel, Ivy continued her assessment. Rachel's breaths came in quick, laboring gasps, an alarm bell indicating an imminent collapse. Ivy recognized the signs. She had been here before, instinct guiding her hands swiftly. Remembering a specific inhaler she had seen earlier in a teammate's bag, Ivy gestured urgently, explaining Rachel's condition in concise terms. "I need the inhaler from the side bag, hurry." The older coach struggled to comprehend initially, but her clear, crisp instructions left no room to doubt. When the inhaler appeared in her hand, Ivy administered the medication with practiced efficiency, following it with deliberate resuscitation as Rachel's form relaxed slightly, responding to her treatment. Rachel's breathing softened slightly, losing some of the frantic edge. The sound of approaching footsteps told Ivy the paramedics were finally navigating through, her actions already buying them precious minutes. As they arrived, longing to share her relief was marred by Rachel's faltering consciousness. Ivy gently cradled her, murmuring words of encouragement as she updated the paramedics on every step she'd taken, staying poised even as the crowd tightened around them again, their prying eyes no longer scornful but fascinated. Whispers echoed among the spectators, marveling at the turn of events. "Is she a paramedic?" one asked, disbelief held at bay by awe. "Who would have thought?" An older man in well-worn running shoes peered at Ivy with something akin to grudging respect. "I'd say she saved the day. Took the track captain long enough to let the lady do her magic." Remarkably, little by little, Ivy faded from center stage, sliding silently back into familiar work mode, correcting misconceptions growing across social media. In stark contrast, the confusion melted into a newfound appreciation. They would come to know more about the quiet woman from the concession stand who happened to hold lives in her hands. Rachel was stabilized, her eyes finally fluttered open with clarity returned, and relief washed over Ivy in earnest. The heroism etched into Ivy's brave face became a beacon despite her plain attire, a relief floating above disbelief despite stale assumptions. The paramedics prompted Ivy to step aside, and only then did she allow herself a brief moment of reflection. Gazing beyond the brightly lit scene, her heart regulated itself, reassured by the upheld trust placed on instincts cherished but hidden before. Someone called her name, drawing her focus back to the present. Rachel's coach, a balding man with glasses almost tipping off his nose, extended gratitude, his hand outstretched. "You saved her. Thank you doesn't seem enough." Ivy met his gaze, shook his hand with a modest smile, only managing, "I did what needed to be done." The applause that erupted around them wasn't for Ivy's anonymity anymore but for the unexpected heroine willing to disrupt shadows to safeguard Rachel. Winks of recognition now reflected in the once disinterested glances as Ivy stood not just a background worker. While coaches began to stand tall again, comforted by Ivy's prowess, murmured prayers echoed relief enriched by curious exploration of Ivy Warren's story, one that carried a melody beyond expectations, where silence forged strength perceived through actions. Media coverage focused on her, journalists revising their notes, eager to learn more about the woman behind heroism. Perhaps the dynamic world didn't notice it yet, a shift no doubt underway. The subtle reality where Ivy Warren stepped forward was no longer destined to echo invisibly. Safe in knowledge, stilling panic's dictates, she remained unwavering, a modern-day guardian for athletes once distanced but now encircled by quiet resolve. The lasting harmony echoed in their sigh, "Thank you, Ivy." More than words could say. The scene around her blurred, the cheers and the pats on her back fading into a background hum as Ivy Warren found herself slipping into memories, back to a time when she was Ivy Warren, the celebrated emergency medical technician with a reputation that preceded her wherever she went. Years ago, Ivy was a rising star in the world of sports medicine. She moved through high-stakes events with a poise that suggested she was born for this line of work. The clamor of athletes in distress, the organized chaos of emergency response teams, the appreciation in the eyes of those she helped, all were part of a thrilling daily routine. There was a day at the national championships that stayed etched vividly in her mind. Ivy had been stationed at the finishing line when an athlete stumbled across it, breathing erratically. With a calm reserve that had become her trademark, she'd sprinted forward and swiftly taken control, implementing life-saving measures that turned potential tragedy into a story of narrow triumph. Her hands, steady and confident, had brought the athlete back from the brink, earning Ivy widespread respect and admiration from her peers. Yet, life had a way of spinning its web in unexpected patterns. Things changed when a car accident struck her family like a virtual tidal wave, leaving Ivy's younger sister, Emily, severely injured and in need of constant rehabilitation. Their parents long gone, there was no question in Ivy's heart about where she belonged, not at the forefront of sports medicine, but by her sister's side. Ivy transitioned from the fast-paced world of emergencies to the quiet world of hospital waiting rooms, therapy appointments, and home care. The days were long and challenging, but her commitment to her sister redefined her purpose. Each smile she coaxed from Emily, each milestone reached in therapy, was fuel for the quiet fire in Ivy's heart. As the medical expenses mounted, Ivy realized she needed a steady job that allowed her to remain near Emily and continue tending to her needs. That was how she ended up at the Olympic Training Center, working at the concession stand. The idea of staying close to the environment of her past, albeit in a different capacity, was both reassuring and bittersweet. In the quieter moments, when customers were scarce, and Ivy was left alone with her thoughts, she felt the pang of nostalgia mixed with a hint of yearning. The sounds of the track events could never fully drown out the memories of her former life. Every whistle and cheer from the crowd was a reminder of the adrenaline that came with her past responsibilities. But Ivy persevered, packing away her EMT credentials as relics of another era, not out of shame but necessity. She needed to be present for Emily, and sometimes sacrifices were necessary to see the world turn right for her sister. What Ivy never anticipated was the complete anonymity that her current job provided. A specter of the lively, confident, and capable woman she once was, she was content to let people mistake her for the background detail she maintained. She accepted her existence on the sidelines without complaint, recognizing it as a choice made from love and duty rather than defeat. Still, there were days when Ivy wished she could unite the seemingly disparate parts of her life into a balanced whole, where she could be both the caring sister and the vital heroine. Back in the present, with the crowd slowly thinning and the sun starting to dip beyond the horizon, Ivy stood near the refreshments counter, reflecting on the day's events. The past she had neatly tucked away reasserted itself with a dogged insistence. Rachel Mendez continued to recover at the nearby hospital, hopeful, resilient, and grateful, a living proof of Ivy's enduring instincts and competence, even if kept dormant until needed. Word of her actions spread far beyond what had once been Ivy's simple job description. It no longer felt like an unassuming position, it was now a point of congregation where athletes would detour to chat with Ivy, sharing stories of close calls and sporting experiences. They sought her advice not only on injuries but as a confidant who spoke the language of their passionate world. Forgotten were the condescending whispers about her shoes or simpler experiences. Emily noticed changes, too. She'd tease Ivy about her newfound fame within the athlete community, mockingly accusing her of acting like she didn't miss that world. Admit it, Emily would laugh, fame's gone to your head. Next, you'll be giving interviews. In response, Ivy would beam, responding, hey, as long as my sandwiches are famous, I'm doing just fine. They both knew there was more to it than sandwiches, as the balance Ivy sought came into clearer focus. For Ivy, re-emerging as a lifeline in an unexpected place was no coincidence. Just as no collision altered a course, neither the literal nor the metaphorical, but transformation altered identity and challenge rewrote expectations. Where Ivy previously saw mere compromise and history, she now recognized layers of strength and complexity. Life breathed through ordinary moments, those she tended carefully and gifted generously each day, choosing presence and persistence over regret or lost titles. Whether saving a life on the track or sharing an ice-cold lemonade with her sister on a lazy Sunday afternoon, everything was woven into meaningful existence with new choices ahead. Witnessing Ivy's renewed vigor and invisible dignity, Emily felt pride anew. There upon the track's edge under fading sunlight, another chapter hinted at promise just around the corner only Ivy could truly embrace. The day following Rachel Mendez's collapse dawned with a new world for Ivy Warren. She arrived at the Olympic Training Center a little earlier than usual, hoping to slip unnoticed into her routine. Yet, as she entered the complex, she found herself met with nods of respect and friendly greetings from faces she barely recognized. Word of yesterday's events had spread far and wide as if the tale of her actions had imprinted itself on every corner of the establishment. Spectators who had witnessed the entire ordeal now lined up at the concessions not for snacks, but for a moment to express their gratitude to the woman who had quickly become somewhat of a local legend. Athletes and coaches who previously glanced past her intercepted her to extend their thanks or merely to chat. Ivy found herself at the core of conversations she had always watched from the periphery. "Hey, Ivy," called Mark, a resident coach who worked closely with the sprinters. "I've got to say, we didn't realize we had a lifesaver in our midst. I don't think I've ever seen someone remain so composed. You handled everything brilliantly." Surprised by the sincerity in his eyes, Ivy nodded, modesty coloring her cheeks. "Thanks, Mark. I just did what I could." It's something I've trained for, you know. As the crowd swirled around her, Ivy noticed that her usual blend into the background was no longer possible. Everyone seemed to have discovered her identity, thanks to the media buzz that wouldn't quite die down. Headlines all around described the anonymous heroine at the training track, while social media buzzed with snippets of videos capturing Ivy's actions in the heat of the moment. Ivy. Jasmine, a junior athlete, waved her phone excitedly. Have you seen this? The video of you has gone viral. You're all over the news. Awkwardly, Ivy watched shaky footage someone had capturing the intensity and urgent precision with which she had worked on Rachel. Watching herself respond the way she had so many times before, in what now seemed a past life, felt surreal. The message threads were filled with images of Ivy as an EMT, a well-intentioned sleuth dredging up old videos of her receiving an award for her services during a marathon 3 years ago. It felt like eons since Ivy had worn that uniform with such pride. It wasn't just the staff and athletes at the center who were talking. Visitors from the public, invited for specific training events, recognized Ivy and approached her with warmth. Their reactions oscillated between curious inquiries and heartfelt commendations. Emily, ever the supportive presence, was thrilled by the burgeoning attention. Their evenings together were peppered with new stories Ivy brought home, shared over shared comfort meals. You're basically a celebrity now, Emily teased one evening, playful incredulity in her voice. Despite herself, Ivy couldn't help but smile, a reluctant bloom of pride filling her veins. Her coworkers, once indifferent or distracted by their own tasks, now exchanged stories about Ivy's prowess, their tones laced with refined camaraderie. Lionel, who manned the counter 3 days a week, offered Ivy a lightly mocking toast, lifting his paper cup of coffee, proclaiming with exaggerated reverence, "To Ivy, the woman of the hour, hear hear." Ivy chuckled, appreciating the humor despite her slight embarrassment, feeling acknowledged yet still adjusting to that spotlight. "Thanks, Lionel," she replied with a grin. "Ever need a lifesaver at the coffee machine, I'm your woman." Rachel Mendez herself had reached out to Ivy's contact via her coach, determined to connect properly once stronger. Rachel's regenerative press conferences became an unintended testament to Ivy's bravery and resolve. "I owe my life to a woman few knew but everyone should, Ivy Warren. I can't wait to thank her in person," Rachel had declared, igniting another wave of interest in discovering more about the quiet woman behind proactive hands. Beyond the gratitude, Ivy noticed subtle shifts in her environment. With newfound visibility, concessions were established more prominently, bringing together athletes and staff alike. Her singular perspective, once unshared, developed within evolving approaches to athlete safety, forming fresh dialogues among teams. The tendrils of respect, extending through those familial thresholds crossed the week since, began to transform something within Ivy herself. She wore her previous EMT experiences with renewed poise, sharing insights with young athletes curious about emergency preparedness and offering herself quietly to ensure others felt both seen and heard. Online articles traced Ivy's trajectory from her EMT days to her concealed responsibilities at the center, portraits of determination, sacrifice, and resilience imprinted across digital landscapes. One piece in particular, featuring interviews with former colleagues, resurrected a sense of nostalgia as they spoke fondly of Ivy's capabilities and sensibilities that transcended every professional barrier, a homage keeping Ivy grounded while reintegrating her dual narrative. Slowly, Ivy felt space freeing itself from its confines, providing both the peace and promise she'd long restrained. Like nuanced choreography rediscovered, Ivy found life once fragmented now unfolding into interconnected roles, balancing her twin allegiances between home and profession with searing grace, her footprints laid for future visionaries called to adjust such interwoven paths. Perhaps most deeply, Ivy saw the rekindling in Emily's eyes, a light inspired by witnessing her sister's rebirth, affirming Ivy found her rhythm in leveraging shared truth that invokes hope within and externally unifies lives long tethered between demands future generational impacts. As Ivy's world expanded along its meticulously carved threshold, the realization dawned that she had been shaping her narrative all along, neither invisible nor confined, merged at heartfelt vanishing points, ceaselessly redefining purpose. Awareness surged, extending beyond mere reconciliations and kind gestures, embodying hopeful reconciliation and forward-facing resolve, infusing Ivy's journey with vitality unforeseen. A few weeks passed, and the buzz surrounding Ivy Warren's remarkable actions had not quite settled down, though it had evolved into a more muted but lingering appreciation rather than an immediate craze. Ivy continued her work at the Olympic Training Center, her interactions now filled with warmth and pride rather than indifference or bemusement. On an unassuming Tuesday morning, as Ivy was setting up the coffee station, she noticed a familiar face entering the training center office. It was Rachel Mendez, no longer accompanied by a whirlwind of doctors and coaches, but smiling warmly and walking with regained vitality. Her presence was greeted by staff with nods of encouragement, acknowledging her returned vigor, but Rachel made a beeline for Ivy. "Hi Ivy," Rachel began softly. Her once stern athletic demeanor was now interwoven with gratitude and vulnerability. "Can we talk for a moment?" "Of course," Ivy replied, sensing the significance of this encounter as she gestured toward a quieter corner of the lobby. "I just wanted to finally meet you and thank you properly," Rachel continued, her voice filled with earnestness. "It was your quick thinking that made all the difference. I owe you my life." Ivy's smile was gentle, appreciative, and she shook her head modestly. "You would have done the same for someone else in my place, but I'm glad I could help." Rachel hesitated, an unexpressed anticipation shimmering in her gaze. "Actually, there's something else. I heard from Mark that there's an opportunity you might want to consider." "What do you mean?" Ivy's curiosity piqued. Rachel handed Ivy a crisp envelope marked with the symbol of the local sports medicine program. "It's an invitation to join the Rapid Response Training course. They're offering you a scholarship and want you to consider taking on a leadership role in their emergency response team." The weight of the offer fell over Ivy like a refreshed breeze, stirring something deep within her that she hadn't realized needed awakening. She studied the letter, her mind swirling with the implications, returning to the work she loved in a capacity that aligned both with her current commitments and her passion. For a moment, self-doubt clawed at the edges of her decision. Thoughts of her sister, of the stability she had built despite the challenges, and of the delicate balance she had sought after leapt to mind. But as she looked up, the support waiting in Rachel's gaze, and by extension, that of the entire athletic community, provided unexpected nudges of encouragement. At home, Emily noticed Ivy's contemplative demeanor. "What's got you so lost in thought?" she asked as they prepared dinner. Ivy handed the letter over to Emily. "This came today. It's an opportunity, but I'm not sure." Emily's eyes skimmed the page, widening as realization set in. "Ivy, this is amazing. You were born for this, don't let anything tell you otherwise." "But what about you?" Ivy countered gently, grappling with her familial obligations. "We'll figure it out," Emily replied confidently, reaching for her sister's hand. "You've done so much for me, and now it's time for you to move forward." With her sister's reassurances bolstering her spirit, Ivy accepted the invitation. It felt like reclaiming a part of herself that had remained dormant for far too long, reconnecting with a narrative she had thought was lost but had only lain hidden, waiting to be rewritten. The morning of her first day at the sports medicine program, Ivy stood in front of her mirror, wearing the new uniform that signaled her return to the field. The fabric, clean and new, seemed to blend the strength and grace of her past with the resilience and love that marked her present. A photo on the dresser caught her eye, a snapshot of her and Emily, smiling wide, arms slung around each other on a sunlit day. It was all the reminder she needed of the steps she'd taken to reach this juncture. At the center, her colleagues from the previous weeks, athletes and staff alike, welcomed her warmly into the more practical role she now played. She guided new recruits with her expertise and experience, her voice authoritative yet filled with empathy that endeared her to both seasoned and aspiring personnel. Rachel, attending her first training session post-recovery, caught Ivy's eye and waved. Their connection, forged through crisis, blossomed into a friendship that transcended shared experiences, a representation of the community Ivy had found and fostered in such an unexpected manner. By evening, as the sun's final rays cast long shadows across the track, Ivy packed her things for the day but lingered in the silence left by busy days' memories. Her phone rang as she closed her office door. It was Rachel, sharing updates and insights about ongoing athletic projects. Ivy smiled at the resurgence of familiar energies within her, accelerating momentum yet tethered to rooted happiness found both in the lives she embraced and the love she sheltered. Returning home, Ivy found Emily waiting, a shared candlelit dinner signaling celebration. "To you, Ivy," Emily toasted proudly. "For always finding the strength to chase dreams. Only because you believed in me." Ivy clinked her glass gently, contentment flowing through to her toes. The cycles of duties and kindness stretched forth, palpable reminders of Ivy's initial hesitance overcome now with inevitable acceptance. In the lore of shared commitment and newfound camaraderie, Ivy stepped forward, neither anticipating reversals of fortune nor exploiting individual accolades. Swiftly, like threads weaving vitality across history, Ivy charted emerging ambitions with capacity for empathy tempered into her daily engagements. Thus, the evening concluded, an ending merging occasion's serene reflection and practical resolve with Ivy taking position not at crossroads, nor on thresholds bereft life's many hues, on her own 2 feet, neither invisible nor afraid, guidance embedded in shaping shadows beyond horizon's nexus.